Mobile network performance in rural and to a certain extent urban areas is a continual problem. But while doing a network modernisation survey for my house, specifically relating to the wireless network, I discovered it actually works as a fairly good analogy as to some of the problems that the mobile network operators have in providing everywhere with a high speed, high reliability sort of coverage layer, if you like. So in order to have good coverage and speed, you need to have lots of cell towers so that each one's only covering a small area and therefore only a few customers per tower. Good spectrum, and basically enough airspace to carry all the data, and also backhaul to offload all that data to the internet or the sort of telephone and text switching system to then carry the calls over to their destination. So I'm inside my house, which we're just going to use for the purpose of this analogy as being the sort of urban area, and we've got an access point here, 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 and under here. So that basically means that we have 4 access points covering the sort of small area around the upstairs. So having these 4 access points dotted around the place means that devices can be spread across them, reducing the load on each cell, if you like, to use the analogy. Furthermore, each of those access points, or towers, are all fed over Cat6 here. So in other words, they're connected to the rest of the network via very fast infrastructure. So they can offload their data really quickly and there isn't sort of a bottleneck there. And just to make things even faster, 3 out of those 4 access points broadcast on 5 GHz as well as 2.4 GHz. So there's loads and loads of airspace. So in other words, everything's perfect in here and the data speed is really, really fast. So we're talking about 40 megabytes per second, which is around about 320 megabits per second. So obviously way faster than you'll get over 4G at the moment, but that's just, I guess, where the analogy fails a bit with the technologies. So we've seen how inside the house, so basically the urban area, is covered by lots and lots of access points to cover all the users and devices. But what about outside? So here we've got the sort of large area with only sort of a user coming here once every so often. So if you think like, I don't know, the Highlands, Scotland or something, where there's not very many users at all. So what covers this? So in here we have one access point which is outputting on 2.4 GHz, so it's the band that's not so good for carrying data, so they can't have as many devices at the same time and the speeds won't be so good. And also there's only one of them, so the devices can't basically spread across a number of different access points to increase the speed. And also it's not fed off like a 1 gigabit LAN connection that can very quickly offload the data to the internet. It's running off a power line adapter, which is quite a long way away from the master controller. So in other words, the speed to the internet down here is only about 20 meg per second, and that's got to be shared amongst the very large area that this covers. So in a sale example, you'll have, say, a big tower at the top of the mountain which covers potentially tens of square miles, and it's fed off a microwave backhaul which isn't very fast, and therefore the connection in that area will be slow, and because there's not that many users or devices, there's no point, say, in me putting another one of these at the other side of the field, because having poor coverage there doesn't really matter that much to the company. So I guess it's time for a conclusion. So we can see in the urban area we've got lots of masts, good bands, nice fibre backhaul running into potentially gigabits per second, and 3G and 4G, so lots of fast data. Whereas in the rural areas we've only got a few masts because having amazing coverage isn't all that important. The bands tend to be lower frequency, which are only good for covering really large areas, but they don't really have the capacity to provide high speeds. The backhaul's only microwave because that's the only way of covering masts that are really far away from everything else. And there's not really enough users to justify the cost of upgrading them to 3G or even 4G.